Уважаемые коллеги,
Distinguished colleagues, I'm pleased to welcome you at 2022 Gaida Forum. This is the second day of the forum. Today we have a very important thematic session, which is dedicated to the beginning of a technological revolution in construction. We are going to talk about building information modeling technologies, whether that is a driver or a barrier to development in construction. We should dispel a myth that this is something absolutely new. No, the beginning dates back to 3 to 4 years. First, preparation started on going digital, and a lot of documents were adopted by the president, by the chair of the Russian government, by the vice chair, and also a lot of decrees were adopted by our relevant ministry, the Ministry for Construction and Utilities. And 2021 was filled with discussions. There was a number of discussions and conferences, nationwide conferences, and BIM technologies were discussed in a heated manner by different speakers. And I have to point out that in 2020, 2021, construction turned out to be one of the leaders in industrial growth. The statistics, well, it's a record high of 90 million square meters. Moreover, construction accounts for around 5.7% of the GDP, plus utilities, that's around 11%. As per the government's plans, we intend to ratchet up this ratio to 15%. So this is indeed a very big share. At the same time, we need to understand that construction is a conservative industry, and many processes take years to develop. And Order 331 of the government of the Russian Federation was adopted and stipulated that starting from January the 1st, 2021, all project organizations that have government orders will have to use BIM technologies. At the end of 2021, there was a decree signed by Prime Minister Mishustin stipulating a concrete plan for digital transformation. It has a number of concrete points, concrete objectives. It took into account expert opinions. There were many proposals coming from the expert community. The Vice Prime Minister also drafted a detailed plan for implementing this decree. But let's turn to the details. Let me introduce the speakers whom we have invited to participate in this session. We have Konstantin Mikhaylik, Deputy Minister for Construction and Utilities. I have to say that Konstantin has been working in this field for the last 6 months, but he comes to us from the field, as it were. And I think that the ministry's team has done a lot since the beginning of 2020 to make sure that the construction industry is ready for this reform. Let me also introduce Mr. Igor Manylov, head of Glavgos Expertise, the State Board of Expert Reviews. Igor, we will also have very interesting questions addressed to you that are sure to bring about a very interesting discussion. We also have Nikolay Burlutskiy, one of the members of the board of BIMeister, and we'll talk about Russia's self-sufficiency in this field. We'll talk about how much Russia's construction industry is dependent on the Western construction industry. We live in a very competitive environment, and since we are dependent, we will have to understand whether this dependency will have an effect on the reform, what the potential of our industry is, and whether it is at all capable of achieving the objectives we've set for ourselves in the coming 2 to 3 years. So, to start with, let me give the floor to Deputy Minister Mikhaylik. I would like to ask you the following. We conducted a survey, to initiate a discussion. And let me point out some positive things from the outset. We see that according to the survey that we conducted at the expert community, with the business community, there are not many grievances against state boards for expert review. Yes, there are some problems, but they are not that high on the ranking. I have to say that standard requirements and deficiencies of legislation are not ranking among the most prominent problems either. As we can see, the most important thing is lack of highly qualified human personnel, the high costs of implementation, as well as the unwillingness of investors and contractors to work using the BIM technologies, but this also boils down to personnel. You have done, however, a great work, and as far as I understand, the ministry has launched a number of practical initiatives, and you've drafted them and you've implemented some of them by 2022. So over to you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yes, we hear you very well. Good day. First, let me turn back to the table that you've just shown. It's very representative because it reflects the main problems we have right now. As you pointed out so aptly, at the end of last year, there was a big event dedicated to BIM, and there was a number of big initiatives on methodologies. 2021 was the year that we laid a solid foundation. You mentioned the strategy for digital development, which was adopted at the end of 2021. You also mentioned Deputy Prime Minister's Husnuling's strategic plan. These documents set the directions for us to move in. Unfortunately, the implementation of BIM technology in Russia is somewhat lagging behind as compared to the rest of the world. If we look at the world markets, then we will see that the BIM market was worth $6 billion in 2020. And it's projected to grow at least twofold in the next 3 years. The thing is, in all the developed countries, developed as per the usual terminology, there are some strict requirements for information modeling, and they have already been mandatory. In the US, it's been mandatory since 2007, and in the UK since 2016, and in Germany too, I think. But of course, technologies vary from place to place. Sometimes they make modeling only obligatory at the design stage. The Americans have adopted a number of standards, and it's up to the company to decide. But still, the level of penetration of this technology is very low, very widespread. So Russia could try to catch up, but it's not enough for us. We have more ambitious goals. The ministry has very ambitious objectives. So what we need to do is to bring about a breakthrough, but it has to be done through evolution, not through revolution. This has to be a gradual process, and step by step we will cover all the life cycle of a building with the BIM technology. So from design to decommissioning. And this has to be obligatory. But for this to happen, we need to pass 2 points of bifurcation, as it were, which we see represented at the table you've demonstrated to all of us. So we need to make sure to remove the problems that have popped up before us: the methodological barrier, the cost barrier, the lack of personnel barrier. We understand that technologies require investment, and investment has to bring return. You know, Decree 331 stipulates that all participants of the market need to use BIM, but of course we need to understand that the private constructors have to understand that this makes sense to use such technologies. And if we look at the world practice, then we will see that it is economically feasible, because it brings down the time required to build, and also the costs go down by 10 to 15%. Risks are managed far more efficiently, far better. Moreover, it is easier to project costs, so you can understand that the costs are going to be lower from the very outset, and you can allocate your resources better, communication goes better, so operation costs go down as well. So it is economically feasible, but for this advantage to realize, we need to remove the barriers. We do sense that right now the participants of the market are not willing to integrate. You remember there is this third point on your table. Last year, starting from September, we constantly organized meetings with the business community. We understand that Decree 331 is aimed at government procurement, at government orders. And as of now, more than 95% of our Russian regions are ready for BIM implementation. But of course, we need to distinguish between what we asked and the outcome we got. First, the regions have drafted a list of orders. They have drafted roadmaps for BIM technology implementation, and as per those roadmaps, they started training. They have also come up with a list of technological solutions they're going to use. And also they procured the necessary software and hardware. And as far as these several objectives go, 95% of our regions have claimed that they're ready. Of course, we need personnel. By 2022, 2023, we need to train more than 300,000 workers, employees. They need to train how to use BIM technologies. This will allow us to ensure a lifelong learning cycle as well as reskilling cycle. That is why we have set up a special coordination center. We have launched special education courses. In 2022, they will be bolstered up, and this makes us ready. By 2024, we will have had enough specialists, enough professionals, and these courses vary a lot. Some of them are aimed at government employers, at government managers, at contractors, at employees. So if you set the strategy for the industry's development, you need to understand BIM technologies as well. So these courses are aimed at different levels of the hierarchy, as it were, and they are taught not just at the Moscow State Building University, but also at Innopolis and on Sakhalin. There is a special program. So we are trying to create several hubs where BIM technologies are taught by a consortium of universities. So these courses will be geographically diversified and also diversified in terms of the audience they're aimed at, and this will fully satisfy all of our needs, both from the point of view of the government and from the point of view of professionals. Now, a couple of words about the software, which was one of the problems that we saw on the table here, have demonstrated at the very beginning. It is true that as of now, we do not have a full cycle of software from design to decommissioning, which would give any consumer the right to, enter the market and start using the product right away. But there is the roadmap adopted by Mr. Husnuling, and we're also working with the Digital Development Ministry, and right now this is one of our priorities. We know full well that we have Russian-designed software which is very efficient, which is very convenient to use, very user-friendly. It is very efficient for each and every part of the life cycle. But separately, so far, these softwares have not been integrated. Right now, the ministry seeks to bring together a platform which is going to make it convenient for designers to interact. So a new participant will be able to get access to these softwares and will be able to address any part of the life cycle, from design to construction to maintenance to decommissioning. So this is the integration our government, our bodies are trying to create, and we want to do that by 2021. And I can assure you, Pavel, that by the end of 2022, we will have had a compendium of information products which will allow us to achieve the goals we've set forth for ourselves. And training, of course, is important, but I mentioned that already. You said that this is not that big of a problem, but I think that one of the ministry's objectives is to shape the methodology, the public standards, which have to encourage the use of BIM technologies as much as possible. Together, we will be able to launch 13 public standards for BIM. They will set the requirements for the structure, for the elements. We've just updated of 2 compendiums of codes, 326, 328, and together with Igor Evgenievich, we are working very actively on XML templates. I think they have evolved a lot, and from PDF files we migrated to XML extension. The ministry has set up a working group on the digital transformation, as well as the interagency working group on the implementation of Decree 331 by the Ministry of Construction, and they will emphasize this methodology to make sure that the public standards reflect on time all the innovations and all the requirements of the market. And right now I'm ready to take your questions. Thank you, Deputy Minister. And as far as I can see, you're an optimist, not just rational optimist, but also there is ground behind your optimism. We're not trying to belittle any of the problems that exist, but there are priorities. And I think that methodology so far is not that important from the point of view of the market. Once there is more practice, when there is a palpable need for standardization, when state surveys are issued, when they start working with public standards firsthand, then methodology will probably come to the forefront. Now that you have spoken, I would like to show you another survey. We have taken 4 top problems, and we've asked our listeners, our audience, we would like to ask them to vote.
вот запустили, да, очень хорошо.
Oh, yes, I can see. The survey is there. Colleagues, I would like you to vote. And 5 to 10 minutes before the end, we will be able to draw some conclusions.
Собственно говоря, вот
Our listeners will be a more diversified group, so it's going to be interesting. And last question, Konstantin. You mentioned the digital gap, the digital inequality. So what do you think about this gap between advanced regions such as Moscow, St. Petersburg,
и какие-то
Kazan, for instance?
активные постройки регионов.
And
Вот насколько начало 22 года...
less advanced regions. So in 2021, did we manage to narrow down this gap? Well, the thing is, the Gaida Forum is exactly the place to have a discussion, so you do not come here to report and then, go away. You can have a lively discussion. So in September, we had this first survey, and we had the last survey last year in December 2021, and it demonstrated that all regions, without exception, understood the importance of this tool. It's very easy to encourage people to use the instruments they understand the use and the worth of. If they do not see the worth of an instrument, they won't use it. But if they do, they will. In the past, there were some advanced regions, and by December, they were absolutely ready for this process, and they were interested in further implementation. Thank you. Minister, don't disconnect, please. Maybe you'll have a chance to speak before the end of the discussion. Before I give the floor to Igor Manylov, head of the State Board of Expert Review, I would like to say that your state board, as well as regional boards, act sort of the first line of defense that are going to be responsible for the reform implementation, the first electronic documents in the digital environment. You've done a great work in, piloting XML extensions and also machine-read algorithms. Very often, there is a question about the efficiency of these technologies, but we don't think we need to answer that question because the world has already given its answer. But we see that costs go down, time goes down, so it's obvious. And I would like to ask you to tell me what's happening and what your objectives are.
Very good day, colleagues. Thank you, Konstantin, that you are with us. I'm more tranquil in the T's, and I can see that we have consolidated a broad support base within the construction ministry and the construction organizations across the regions, and all the developers are lined up for the same purpose. Well, judging by the dialogue between you and Konstantin, I can, basing on that, come clean with my position, and I think that this technological revolution is quite dramatic, is radical, and more changes are in the pipeline. But I concur with Konstantin that we should speak about an evolution, and the global development shows that these changes are quite jerky. They are not smooth and incremental. And our Glove Expertise team, and we've been around for quite a while, at least since 2015 and even prior to that. And in 2015, the first digital transformation strategy was laid out, and all the expert assessment and evaluation bodies were faced with the same challenges, because we needed to proceed from the blueprints to real tangible action. And I'll skip a few slides here
По сути, формировали
to
единый,
say that
потому что
we had to shape a uniform environment because the federal level decisions had been made
если
to the fact that no expert evaluation body could present its results unless those findings were
такой данный,
uploaded to the uniform registry
мы на примере нашего развития
that brings together all the construction data.
организации,
And
которые
our expert evaluation institute,
600, то есть это
and
сотни
there are around 600 expert evaluation and review
все, по сути,
entities, both private and public, and we all operate within the same landscape. And I believe this is one of the key prerequisites for the deployment of the
Александровича
IMT.
завершен процесс
And last year,
экспертиз на единую цифровую платформу.
well, we shifted to the uniform expert evaluation and review platform with the help of Konstantin, and 89 entities started using that in their industrial operations. Well, we previously had doubts about that. We were skeptical, but actually
Теория о том, что
we profess a vision that all the obstacles help us move forward.
серьезным трамплином.
And in this case, this undertaking is serious, formidable springboard for us, an enabler. And as Konstantin put it, last year we had to pilot the
Формат
XML format,
и
irrespective of what systems and developments and process
позволил
our
запустили
entities used. We launched the XML cost sheets
и был избран такой формат. Были под
and reports and findings of the
строем России опубликованы.
expert reviews, and the construction ministry
80%
made public the templates
наступило 1 января, как в
for us to rely upon.
XML формате.
And despite the deadline was coming in December,
Люди ручками
well,
данные.
80% of the entities
Одной экспертизы.
started using that in advance.
Конечно,
I
существенно.
mean, this uniform single state register, this is machine-readable data
Основой для создания новых
that is easy to process, and you can come up with new products for the industry. I hope that all the professional participants and stakeholders know that. So the single state register
1 января этого года уже 205 тысяч заключений. Это
contains more than
разделов. Это
205,000
причем это и
findings and reports for all types of installations and facilities. And behind each of these lines,
капитального строительства до
we have the complete set, comprehensive set of data, starting with the design and up to the construction permit.
по сути является основой.
So we think that this is a good foundation
Ну, концептуально понятно, что
for us to build upon and a good springboard to move forward. So these are two slides that we have evoked for quite a number of times of late. We're moving from the linear
знаете, я вот
scheme of capital construction. You know, you can compare capital construction to a plant. Like if you have a factory and if you are to enhance its performance, well, it is a standard process. You just reskill people and improve the performance, use the
совсем мини. То есть это
well-known toolkit. But for capital construction, you know, it is similar to a brand new factory built from scratch each time. So in this case, this linear layout is effective. So our ideal metrics would mean like abandoning the paper document flow altogether and going digital. And thanks to Decree 331, well, we hope it's an ironclad commitment to abandon paper. Well, you know, the market participants and stakeholders were skeptical, and they thought it would be put off. But, you know, our industrial authorities are kind of serious about that. They're firm and adamant. You know, there probably will not be any postponements, and despite the title of this round table, I would not like everybody to think that this is a milestone and turning the page. You know, the maturity level across the industry may be uneven, but still we have reached a certain stage of mastery with respect to the digital technologies and electronics. Like, just recall Coleman and Wortmann, many market participants say, but we forgot all about those broadsheets and papers. So we've been using software for quite a while. So is it a barrier or not? Well, to a certain extent it is. Like fancy that we are obliged all of a sudden to use iPhone 13, but many of us have been using Nokia instead. Will that be an obstacle? Will that be an impediment? For many of us, yes, but that is easy to overcome. So if we focus on switching to the BIM and training 300,000 operators and professionals and the launch of our proprietary Russian software, well, that should go hand in hand with other measures, support measures, so that we don't have any lacunes and gaps. And our expert evaluation body and institute believes that while pursuing digital transformation, we should focus on training people and designing our domestic software. But at the same time, we should come up with the proper process. And we believe that the key link of switching to the IMT will be evolution, because the global market of the info modeling technologies is based on some developments that are normal for the advanced economies, but we trail them in many aspects. And this short slide demonstrates that there will be no crash. There will be no crash starting with the 1st of July. There will be no collapse, because we have all the regulations in place, approved and enacted, which is a good statement. I've been telling you that from the perspective of the Expert Evaluation Institute, we can provide firm guarantees that given the level of digital maturity in this country, we will smoothly enter this new stage, because we have trained all the experts and we have the technical capability of running these materials at all the platforms, and we have this single expert evaluation digital platform in place. So we believe that there are no impediments from our perspective and on our part, but still we advocate for moving incrementally from simple to less sophisticated things. But probably we should reconsider some of the provisions of Decree 1431, like the imperative norm that 3D format is applicable across the board is not correct. So 3D should be optional and applied where necessary. But for some of the surveys it is not needed, and people will be at pains to comply. Then comes the classify, construction info classify, which would be the common language, the Russian common data language. We believe that we should not adopt a whole dictionary of terms starting from the 1st of January. What we say instead is that we should focus on the separate special segments of the classifier that are already covered by the XML templates, like the classifiers, like the work with sectoral entities. Well, the data sets approved by the construction ministry make the backbone of our future operation. And as regards the development of Russian software, we have already many solutions in place, although they are patchy, disintegrated, disembodied. We still have a lot of the elements in place, though the picture is somewhat patchy. Well, it's not accidental that last year we had many meetings sponsored by the construction ministry, not the digital ministry, because the commissioners of services need to be heard. Their voice must be heard, and we believe that the evolution would reduce the overall tensions if we raise the BIM requirements level straight up to the global parameters, global levels. We will be ruined. Let's recall the Gaidar grandfather and his story about Timur and the gang of Kvakin reading this ultimatum. And what is an ultimatum? The protagonist asked. And a boy replied, it is an international word. It means you are going to be mugged. But you know, we don't want to be lambasted and chastised. And hence we believe that the evolutionary movement towards XML deployment, the smooth and gradual process, is something that we need, because we shouldn't see the IT and software outweigh the process development, which will probably be my last point. Thank you for this very good instance invoking Timur and his team, a set of stories by the writer Gaidar. Although not all our young viewers know that. But now let's move to the safety, because Glava Institute suffered from sanctions because of the licenses. Well, we didn't suffer much. It was probably more of a moral suffering. And let me abuse your time a bit. We were sanctioned as an entity, and in parallel, we were certified according to, well, against ISO 9001. So we received a round of applause and so a praise and some critiques at the same time from them. still there was some acclaim. Well, what else is noteworthy? I want to state and mention that the transformation program signed by the Prime Minister contains provisions about the housing construction process that is about to start in 2023, but many of the developers and the leading companies like Mikhail and others may switch considerable volumes of housing construction to the digital technology, but they use the Western software. And I wonder whether the Russian IT industry is ready to come abreast and overtake their Western peers, because we don't have much time left, because we're pressed for time. I'll be brief. We are the software developers, and our backbone is like the common data environment. And we started with the industrial sector, and then we moved into the civil construction. We thought it would be easier, but actually, as a result, it turned out that the difficulties and obstacles are no less numerous, and the first and the main impediment and impairment was that no one knew what BIM is and why it is needed. And the main market concerns would be, well, first of all, that we have the international software, foreign software, and how data security can be guaranteed. Many may ask, information, no matter how hard you try to protect it and hide it, with all the updates, all the models will be visible to our international competitors, and then comes issue number 2, which is low pace of import substitution. Like on the eve of the new year, an article appeared on RBC saying that we have been falling short and lagging behind with respect to the timelines and targets of that switch to proprietary domestic software. And no one mentioned the big construction, but for them it is hard to cancel the 3 to 5 years contracts that would result in some penalties incurred by them. May I speed you up a bit? You're saying that Russia's share would not be more than 3% from the global BIM market. So we can be abandoned and we can be dropped and jettisoned altogether, which would mean a technological blockade and autarky. Well, we account for less than 3% of the global market, which is a tiny share. But with respect to the main constraints, these include the shortage of skilled manpower, no established requirements with respect to the 3D modeling of installations and facilities. Well, I think the polling is ready. So what is needed? The digital competition, or probably the assistance of the government? Well, I think what is needed is partly the governmental support to SMEs and major big companies also, as regards the prices, the costs. Well, probably these developers should be supported, and probably we should receive some grants. Well, one of the programs in place is compensating 50% of costs. But us being the Gaida Forum team would put that on paper, would make note of that and record that, so the polling results are in the screen. And taking stock of the discussion, I must say that the industry is ready, and our authorities and executive authorities have worked hard. And the first stage of working with the design documents will run smoothly. Well, inequality is an issue, and preparing properly skilled personnel is the call of the day. And the functionality and technological safety and security is also an issue. You know, 11% of our GDP hinges on the software procurement, and what is procured, whether it's procured here or abroad, will make a difference. So, and that is to be sorted out in 2022. But I would invite all the stakeholders of the industry to pilot Russian proprietary software products, and we need to master that, and we need to rewire and streamline these products. I wish us all every success in 2022, and probably in a year's time we'll have a different set of priorities here discussing. Thank you, goodbye.